Well, hello. We're back at this model of printer again today. It's been 5 years since we made the first video about the common problems that this model of printer get with the fuser unit and the wrinkling of the paper. So today's video, we're just using this one as an example. It's the Mfc-9140 CDW. This printer is also known as the 9330, which was the most common model sold. The 9140, the 9340, the proprietary models where they didn't share the model numbers. They protected their revenue stream, which was the 9142, the 9332, the 9342. What else we got? I got the printer only version, which was the hl-3140, hl-3150, hl-3170, and then of course their proprietary ones, the 3142, 3152, 3172. So we got an email today from a guy who's complaining that he's replaced the fuser roller and the printer is still wrinkling the paper. Well, in his case, he's purchased the roller for the wrong reason. If you go back to my video on the counterfeit AliExpress rollers, the fuser roller I sell fixes that particular type of wrinkling, where the upper fuser roller is damaged or torn or split open, and you get the wrinkling down the page. So in this video, we'll just jump back to, and I'll show you what. Okay, so this is the photo of the paper that the guy has sent me. Here we have this is the leading edge coming out of the printer, and this is the trailing edge coming out of the printer. So this is the wrinkling he's complaining of. He's changed the fuser roller and the printer is still producing horizontal wrinkles. So in this particular case, this is caused by the output rollers. So if you have a look, at this point, the paper is still going through the fuser assembly and feeding out. Once it gets to this point, the paper is no longer like it's fused, but it's no longer inside the fuser unit. So it's relying on the output rollers to push the paper up and out. So we'll just go back to the printer. Alright, so we're back here at the printer. If we just turn this around, get a bit of sun in there. Okay, so at the back of the printer, when he has the back door open and the paper comes straight out of the feed rollers here, he doesn't get any wrinkling on the paper. The paper comes out and it's dead flat from edge to edge. What's happening is, as soon as the paper leaves the fuser unit assembly here, about that much of a gap really. So what's happening is these rollers here are not providing enough drive to push the paper up through these rollers and then out through the front rollers down in here, these rollers in here. So that kind of wrinkling is a common sign that either there's a lot of... Alright, so here we are back at the printer. Now the problem he's got is the leading edge is fine, and when he gets to the trailing edge it starts to wrinkle. So what that points to us is that the paper is fine going through the fuser assembly. It's only when it gets to the last few inches of the paper coming out is the issue. So the wrinkling is actually being produced by a combination of all the output rollers slipping on the paper or not providing even drive. So in this case, in this machine, you've got these output rollers. So if he opens the back door and delivers the paper out the back door rather than through the top forward facing output tray, the paper doesn't wrinkle at all. So what that tells us is that these rollers are working okay. So if the paper feeds out this way, it still comes out perfectly fat with no wrinkles. When he feeds to the top output tray, the paper gets wrinkling at the end part of it. So this happens with all laser printers once they reach a certain age or a certain number of copies of pages printed. It's usually by the time the printers have reached around 100,000 pages of printing that the trailing edge wrinkling starts to occur. It also happens when the weather changes. It also happens when there's a lot of moisture in the paper. Damp, wet paper, you'll see this problem more so. So the way to fix it is you need to get some turpentine. That's preferred because that dissolves all oil-based contaminants on the actual rubber rollers. So on these rubber rollers, so what happens is when the paper isn't a perfect product, it comes from trees, usually like pine chips, and they're heavy on pine oil. So as the paper's coming out and the paper is being heated to 200 degrees Celsius, in areas that have really high moisture in the air, you'll notice on like cold days that the machine is producing steam, and it's also in the steam there's also oil vapor from the tree pulp. So these rollers end up being coated, and some printers that get a lot of use, this section of the printer can actually become quite wet, and it will actually drip water in certain areas. We don't tend to get it in Australia because it's a very dry place, but wet places like in the UK, New Zealand, just really humid areas, this is a bit of an issue. And we typically only see this issue in Australia at 100,000 pages when the output rollers get coated in a real thin layer of it's like an oily tar. So what you need to do to solve this trailing wrinkling issue, you need to clean all the rollers with turpentine. Failing that, you can also use alcohol and methylated spirits. So you need to clean every single one of these rollers here. You need to clean this roller here. You also need to clean the actual drive. This is just the pressure roller. This doesn't actually do the driving. The one behind it in here is the one that actually does the driving. So you've got to clean this one. You've got to clean this one in here. You've also got to clean the 4 rollers that are in here. A bit hard to get to, but yeah, that's them in there. You just clean them with turpentine and a rag. And under there as well. Now, in really bad printers that are really coated, so you'll use the turpentine to clean these rollers, that will only clean the dirt and the really basic oils on it. In printers where the paper you've used has a really high amount of, especially if the paper was made out of pine chips, what is it, pine tar oil, you have to clean these rollers with oven cleaner. I'll just go and grab a can and show you what I use. Alright, so in Australia we've got a stuff called Easy Off Oven Clean. This stuff will take your fingerprints off, so you probably want to wear gloves when you use it. The main ingredient on this oven cleaner is sodium hydroxide. It's got, what, 54 grams per kilogram. Yep, and diethylene glycol alcohol ether, 55 grams per kilogram. So you don't want to use the oven cleaner that foams. There's 2 types of oven cleaners that you see worldwide. One foams up into this white foam. That stuff is hopeless. You want to get this stuff. This stuff just puts not a white foam over the surface, it just puts this thin film that will just dissolve any sort of grease and carbon buildup. You won't get any carbon buildup in your printer, but you get oil buildup. So if you find after you've cleaned the rollers with turpentine you're still getting the wavy prints at the trailing edge of the document, coat the rollers, put some gloves on, don't spray it on, just spray the stuff into, like, I don't know, the lid that comes on top of the can, and then get your rag, you know, dip it in the cup or whatever you've used to spray the oven cleaner into, and then just coat the rollers with the oven cleaner on each of them. Let the rollers sit for about, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes so that the oven cleaner soaks into the rubber and it dissolves the pine tar that comes off the paper. And then, you know, rinse your rag out, you know, get it like damp with water, and then just wash the oven cleaner off all the rollers. Do it to all of them, so these ones, the one behind it, and on the other side. And then you should find, with any luck, that the printer will stop producing the wavy pattern at the end, because what's happening is these rollers are working okay. They're pushing the paper, but these rollers up here aren't pushing the paper. So what happens is the paper moves very slowly from this point, but this is still pushing the paper along at the prescribed rate, because these rollers actually heat up from the heat that comes off the fuser rollers. So these rubber rollers here will, they'll hit 50 degrees, and because the rubber's soft, it's really grippy and it helps push the paper through. But these rollers, just that simple distance from here to here, these rollers can still be at your ambient room temperature of say 15 or 18 degrees, and that's what creates the compressing of the paper, because the paper is traveling at different speeds simply between this point, and the output point. So just try that, and that should fix your problem. In the worst cases, you actually have to replace these rollers and the output rollers, and typically it's a job we don't even bother with. We just simply replace the printer because it's just too involved a repair to disassemble the machine to get to this section. It's just simply easier just to go and buy another printer with low page count secondhand off Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree or whatever your Craigslist or whatever your local secondhand rag is. And yeah, so hopefully that answers your question as to what the trailing edge waviness on laser printers is. This problem is peculiar to laser printers. All of them, color, black and white. They all eventually get the trailing wavy edge issue, and it usually shows up during winter months when everything's cold and the rubber shrinks and you get issues. So just try that out and hopefully that fixes your problem. Thanks.